right, let's bring in political strategist and commentator Rina Shah. Good to see you, Rina. Let's start off with, obviously, Kamala Harris is full steam ahead. Given the funds she's raised so far, more than $100 million plus. It's taken a little while to get full endorsement. We've just, heard from some further top Democrats. Why do you think it's taken that little bit further to get all the delegates needed?
Oh, I think that getting this many delegates in this short of a time is quite remarkable. I'm actually stunned by it. It's not easy for, this kind of thing to happen and at the speed it's happened, because it's completely new territory for many of us who've been alive. I mean, many of us were too young at the last time this occurred. So I have to be honest with you. I think these state parties came together and have been talking to each other, the state party chairs, and saying we need to project unity and strength, to the American electorate in general, because the Democrats have been to, again, the larger public, because of headlines in the news for 3 to 4 weeks now. They've been looking in disarray. So I think, again, she has certainly become the presumptive nominee, because she's at the point where she has enough delegates to win the nomination on the floor of the convention. But also to remind folks, these delegates are pledged, not bound. And so each state, I know for the Republicans in particular, each state has its own bylaws as to what the delegates are able to do and on what ballot they become unbound, if they are bound. So again, this is all completely within the bounds of normal electoral law. Nothing here is disenfranchising voters, because this is all being done via the procedures and processes which are in place in the Democratic National Committee's bylaws and platform.
Right. Now, there's so much energy behind her now, as we were just talking about before. It's palpable. What chance do you think she actually has of beating Donald Trump? You know, there is a lot to be said for the energy, the contrast, the showbiz that's sort of come along with Kamala Harris, but we're only a few months out from the election. How much does she need to do, and what does she need to do to try and take on Donald Trump seriously?
Well, conventional wisdom would lead us to believe that she has this locked up simply because she's a younger person, and age was at the forefront of this entire campaign between Biden and Trump ever since they both announced that they would be running for the White House again. You know, Donald Trump was kicked out in 2020, and he loves to get on the campaign trail and tell people that the results were unfair, and that, look, he's had many people in his camp try to challenge the results of the 2020 election. But we've come so far away from that now in this moment since Biden announced that he's stepping down. People are giving a real fresh look to Kamala Harris, who, of course, ran herself in the 2020 primary for Democrats. She lost that race, and remarkably, I think Biden chose her as his running mate. So now she has a chance to really hit reset on what the American public even knows about her. I think her chances are good, because not only has she courted the black vote well, she is popular amongst young progressives, and that is Gen Z is really who gave the White House to Biden Harris in 2020. So in essence, what she's already looking at is somewhat of an advantage, because she's been able to appeal to demographics that Republicans are having trouble with. But the whole name of the game is turnout here. And also, we're going to focus on the independent voters in the 7 swing states. Is she going to be able to poll well with Sunbelt voters, which is where Trump has been polling well? I'm talking about Nevada, Arizona, and Georgia. The Rust Belt remains a challenge for Republicans. But again, I think recent polling I've seen makes it all look very neck and neck, but she very much has a chance. I would caution folks that, again, is outright looking at her candidacy and saying she wasn't able to garner much of the Democratic primary vote back then. She's unlikable or what have you right now. Give her a solid look, because Trump is very vulnerable and has some high unfavorables with women and young voters.
While that's very true, there are 2 very big issues that she doesn't have a great reputation in: immigration and the economy. She's carrying Bidenomics. Republicans are accusing her of being the architect of Biden's biggest failures. So what does she need to do here in terms of her strategy about continuing on, Biden's legacy, or how can she shift it to make her look more impressive with these 2 big issues?
Well, and on the one hand, she's going to have to come away from this reputation that Republicans, I think, are wrongly giving her. And that's not a partisan talking point. You know, I'm not publicly supporting Kamala Harris, but I can tell you that I do not think that she was in any way portrayed here domestically as the architect of Bidenomics. I didn't see President Biden or the team around the president himself trying to paint the VP as one of the architects. So she's going to have to push back on that. And she's going to have to do that with facts and visuals saying, look, you know, President Biden, though I respect him, though he was my boss and the person who made me VP, I didn't have anything to do with that. But let's look at it in black and white. Look at the success. You know, retirement accounts have been looking robust. She's going to have to talk in black and white, the figures on that bit. But secondly, about the border, which is, I think, the issues where she's most vulnerable, because Biden really did send her to the southern border first. And she did get tied to those issues quite intimately by traveling to Honduras and going and speaking directly to migrants, saying, just don't come. Just don't come. You know, really that kind of language that was so plain speak, but I again, not rooted in solutions, not giving policies that were meant to curb this migration at the southern border. So I really do think that is where the highest point at which she is most vulnerable. And again, Republicans have been making immigration and tying it to public safety and crime. They've been doing they've been making a case of that for not just many months now, many years now, and that's going to be a tougher place for her to fight back on. But there's a glimmer of hope for her on abortion, which has been such a galvanizing issue for American women across the political spectrum, particularly for independents and center-right women. They are, you know, exasperated and frustrated and fatigued by these draconian bans that they see Republican state legislatures taking on, and they're tying that right back to federal Republicans and to Donald Trump, whose 3 conservative justices he put on the Supreme Court helped overturn Roe versus Wade 2 years ago.
All right, Rina Shah, really appreciate your time today. Thank you.